Thomas, and today we will be talking about some of the basics before you get started in the kitchen. Most of this video is just going to be about the steps I follow when making a dessert so that yours will turn out the best that it can, pretty much. The first step you should always do when baking is to wash your hands, especially right now, but it's always a good thing to do because you never know what might be on your hands. So I will go do that now. I'm not actually going to be baking anything today, so it's not super important for me, but since everyone's sick, you should still just wash your hands whenever. After that, you should pull up your recipe. Especially if you're a beginner baker, it's really important for you to follow a recipe because baking is a chemistry, and if you get things wrong, then it won't all come together nicely like you want it to. So, especially when you're just getting started, you should follow a recipe. Obviously, whatever recipe you're choosing to follow is going to be different from what other people are going to choose. So this is where you just get to choose what you want to make. After that, you can preheat your oven. You should always preheat your oven to whatever it says in the recipe, or else your results might not be great. Most recipes say to preheat to 350, but not all do, and especially if you're making something else that might not need that high of a temperature, you don't want to do that. My sister and her friend were actually once making meringues, and they just found this recipe online. They didn't check it before they started cooking, and they were like, oh, it doesn't have an oven temperature. Oh, 350 is a good bet. And if you're baking meringues, you really don't want to do it at that temperature or else they'll burn. So they put them in the oven, and it was just like warmed egg whites that looked brown. They were pretty disgusting. So always follow your recipe. Which brings me to the next tip. Make sure your recipe is from a good site. Just as I said in that previous example, you have to make sure your recipe is actually a good recipe and won't ruin your thing. All the recipes in my videos I've tested a bunch of times, and I know that they do work, so you don't have to worry about those. But you should always preview your recipe before you begin baking. Then you can prepare your pan. Your recipe will tell you to prepare a certain type of pan. I usually just prepare pans with parchment paper, though sometimes if you're like using a ramekin, you don't want to do that. And if you're making cookies, then yes, parchment paper also, but that's not really a pan, it's just a sheet. You always want to make sure to measure your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients separately. For instance, you don't want to be making chocolate chip cookies and put all the ingredients in and then put in some baking soda and flour separately into that. You want to combine the baking soda and flour in one bowl and the other stuff and then combine them together. This will make sure that you have the best results when cooking. Once you've finished making whatever you're making, you can go ahead and pop it in the oven. I almost always put it in the oven for about 2 to 3 minutes less than the recipe calls for, and I do this because it's better and easier to cook it for not enough time, and then when your timer goes off, add more time, than it is to cook it for too much time, because as far as I know, no one's magical and you can't take away a few minutes once you're done with that. So yeah, just do that, and then you can always add more time because it's better to be safe than sorry, especially when baking. Then when that's done, you can just take it out. Depending on what you're making, you want to let it cool for a different amount of time. I usually specify how long to let it cool for. If it seems like it's something you want to eat warm, then do that, but if it's something like cookies that you want to have however you want them, because some people like cookies warm, some like them cold, then you should do that, and congratulations. You've just finished this class. That's not really a class, but whatever. I will probably make a follow-up video to this at some point to add some more tips, so let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that you want me to give you advice on, and I will see you next time. Also, I forgot about the shirt.